Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today I'm talking about Blossom Tales: The Sleeping King. I was taught from my Nexomon casual review that calling a game a clone of another game can be seen as derogatory, and that is not my intention. So instead I will be saying, instead of this being a clone of A Link to the Past, this is more of a tribute to A Link to the Past. You have the top-down perspective, and the combat is very similar to The Legend of Zelda. There's a lot of other connections, such as an overworld and some dungeons where you get an item and it helps you beat the boss and navigate throughout the dungeon, and it helps you find the next dungeon. And even at the beginning, there's a quick reference to The Legend of Zelda. So basically, the game starts out with an old man sleeping on a chair, and his two grandkids come up to him and ask for a bedtime story. And so he begins to tell us, or rather his grandkids, the story of Lily, the main protagonist in Blossom Tales: The Sleeping King. So as you are playing through this game, Grandpa will be narrating what is going on in the gameplay, and the grandkids will as well. And so sometimes you'll get in a room and you'll defeat like one enemy, and the kids say, "Oh, come on, that wasn't even that hard." And Grandpa will say, "Oh, okay." And then he'll add like more enemies. It kind of reminded me of the DLC for Borderlands 2, the Tiny Tina Dungeons and Dragons DLC, where they're actively playing the game, but they are making decisions and corrections on the fly. And so then the world around you is changing with their quick decisions. And that's where a lot of the humor comes from in this game. There's a lot of jokes and a lot of ribbing between the grandkids and Grandpa as he's telling them this story about Lily. And so at the very beginning of his telling, he's like, "Have I told you about the elf boy with the green pointed hat?" And then they say, "Yes, we've heard it a million times." And obviously that's a reference to A Legend of Zelda. So this game is very much aware that it is a tribute to The Legend of Zelda. Now, there are some differences that threw me off at least a little bit when I was first going into this game. The biggest one, when you play a Legend of Zelda game, usually I can't think of any case where you don't stop moving when you swing your sword. So especially A Link to the Past, you have to stop all other movement when swinging. That is not the case in this game. Lily will keep moving as you are swinging your sword, and she kind of has this three strike attack, as you will, whereas in A Link to the Past it's just one direction. Lily will swing her sword one way, then the other, and then do a 360 spin. Now, she can also hold her sword to charge up, and she's holding her sword right in front of her, just like A Link to the Past, and then she will do a powerful swing, and then you can also initiate another attack, so she launches forward and slams her sword down. Now, when you are holding your sword and you are charging up your spin attack, in A Link to the Past, you will typically do a little poke towards an enemy. You do that in this game too, but your sword doesn't remain outwards when you are holding it. It counts as an attack, and then Lily puts her sword down, so then you have to recharge up your sword, unlike A Link to the Past. But those are minor differences. Most of the stuff, as far as the gameplay goes, is fairly similar to A Link to the Past. Even at the end of the game, when you get your sword upgraded, if you have full hearts, then when you swing your sword, it shoots out this blast in front of you, just like A Legend of Zelda. I briefly mentioned dungeons. There are maybe 4 or 5 different dungeons. It's not a very long game, maybe about 4 hours to complete, which is fine. It's fairly cheap of a game, so it's not like a huge deal. And if you're just looking for something short and sweet, I think this is a perfect fit. But in each dungeon, there is a big chest. You have to defeat a mini boss and then get the big chest, and it will usually give you an item. Well, it will always give you an item to navigate through the rest of the dungeon. So obviously first you're given a bomb that you can throw, and that can break cracked walls and reveal secrets in the overworld, and you can solve puzzles that way. The second thing you get is like a bow and arrow, and then a boomerang. So you're familiar with most of these items, and I feel like I wanted a little more variety in terms of item, maybe something a little more creative. Now granted, you get some other cool things, like you get the fire around you, or the lightning blast or whatever, but in terms of like exciting, unique items, it wasn't really present here. It's just all stuff that you've mainly seen before. That being said, my favorite item that I used all the time was this medallion where you could summon 3 bees and they'll just home out and attack an enemy. But I wanted more stuff like a bee medallion, you know, something a little more creative. But the dungeons were fun and they were actually fairly long, which is a good thing if there's only 4 or 5 of them. The overworld is fun to explore, and just like in A Link to the Past, the overworld is divided up into tiles, and in some tiles there are little puzzles or little things you can do to get more heart pieces or magic pieces, and your heart pieces give you hit points, and some of it's like, hey, get to the end of this obstacle course within the allotted time. Other times it's you blow up a rock and then you find a hole to fall in and there's a puzzle there. And the puzzles were actually fairly unique. They have a lot of them that I've seen before, but they were actually some pretty good brain teasers, like the whole you have to step on every single tile once without crossing over again, so you have to figure out your pathway. Or there's a memory one that really destroyed me. It's basically just like playing that game Simon, where you have to memorize the order of like the 4 different colors. It's like that with 4 different blocks and you have to memorize it. There was one that was so hard. It was like a sequence of 10 different tower notes, and so I eventually had to map each tower to a number 1 through 4, and then I had to write it down as I was looking and do it that way, because I had spent maybe like a good half hour trying to memorize this, and my memory can't keep up with 10 different things I have to remember at one go. You can also upgrade your items. Now, I didn't 100% complete this game, so I don't know if every item can be upgraded, but there are certain resources that you can collect from defeating certain enemies, like feathers or brains or skulls, and if you find the right NPC, you can either sell them 20 of these resources for coins, or you can hand them over and they will upgrade one of your items. So for instance, I upgraded my bow, where instead of shooting 1 arrow, it shot 3. Now again, I'm not sure if it was possible to upgrade every item. It sure would be cool to upgrade a bee medallion, but there are also, I think, 2 or 3 items that I actually didn't even find somewhere on the overworld. There's some pretty common quests that you're trying to do as you are playing through the game, like the post office has you deliver letters to different characters in the overworld in a sequential order, obviously. There are like 20 of these hidden scrolls that you find, and if you find them all, then I'm sure you get something amazing. I'm not really sure. I didn't actually do that. But as you are navigating through this overworld and these dungeons, you can find these teleport stones, so you don't have to actually walk all over the place. Once you've been to a place before, it's pretty easy to teleport back there. I imagine it would take me maybe like 1 more hour to fully 100% complete this game if I was following a guide and I wanted to go and deliver all those letters and find all those scrolls and get all those heart pieces. One thing I do appreciate about the map, compared to something like The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, is it will highlight the tile on the overworld map in yellow just to kind of nudge you in the right direction, because without following a guide, I guess you could get pretty lost playing this game, just like A Link to the Past. So I appreciated just like a little indication, like, hey, maybe you want to, in order to progress the main story, maybe you want to go over to where that yellow highlighted tile is. I do actually feel like, as far as the combat and the puzzles in this game go, it's more difficult than a typical Legend of Zelda game. Like, they're not afraid of just putting a ton of enemies on the screen at once. Like, you go in one room and there's like 20 enemies that you have to face against, and the bosses shoot tons of different projectiles at you, so it's almost kind of like a bullet hell where you have to avoid all the different attacks. The puzzles, like I said, were pretty big brain teasers. I never felt like it was too difficult, though. I don't think I ever even got a game over, and I had plenty of potions left over, so maybe it gave me the illusion of difficulty when it's really not that difficult, which is actually a pretty tough thing to do in video game design. So my hat's off to them for that. The story that Grandpa is telling the grandkids is basically Lily is like a new recruit knight, and the king's evil wizard brother put the king under a sleeping spell, and so you have to navigate to all these different dungeons and find all these different ingredients in order to make a potion that will wake the king up. Fairly simple, but the plot gets the job done. Overall, I actually really liked this game. Didn't overstay its welcome. I was engaged the whole time. I love playing these Legend of Zelda tribute games. So I will give this game a 4 out of 5, and I heartily recommend it. It goes on sale fairly often. You can pick this game up usually for $3 or $4 on the Nintendo eShop. Not sure if it's available on any other platform though. Well guys, that's it for me. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about Blossom Tales: The Sleeping King, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Also, let me know how the sequel is, because they just recently, I want to say within the year, came out with a sequel, which I haven't heard anything about, so let me know if it's good. That's it for me though. I'll talk to you later. Bye!